Welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to configure routing in our custom VPC. So this is the setup we now have. We have 3 public subnets and 3 private subnets, and each of them has an address block assigned. Now, at the moment, we only have the main route table. What we're going to do in this lesson is attach an internet gateway and then specify the internet gateway in the route table. And that route table will apply for our public subnets. We then have a separate route table that we're going to create, and that's going to be for our private subnets. So we then need to actually attach the route table to the relevant subnets. So the private route table will only have this local route. Now that means that any EC2 instance deployed into these private subnets will be able to route to any other IP address within this range, whether it's in a public subnet or a private subnet. So routing happens using that implicit router between any of these subnets. But it doesn't have any route to an internet gateway, which means it can't access the outside world. So an instance doesn't have a public IP address in this subnet because we didn't assign the public IP address automatically. And it also doesn't have an internet gateway to route to anyway. So there's no chance that instances within these subnets can actually access the internet directly. And that's something we'll fix later on in the course using a NAT gateway. But this is what we want to set up now, and this will give our public instances the ability to access the internet because they'll have both a public IP address and an internet gateway in their route table. So let's head back to the AWS Management Console and build this out. Back in the AWS Management Console, I'm going to head over to Internet Gateways. You can see that there's already an internet gateway, and that one is attached to our default VPC. So we're going to create a new internet gateway. I'm going to call this My Custom VPC IGW, and then we're going to choose Create Internet Gateway. So that's it. We've got the internet gateway created, but we now need to attach it, and actually tells us at the top here that we need to do that. So we can just click on this button in the top right hand corner, attach to a VPC. And if we click in this box here, we should see the VPC ID pop up. It's only going to be one option because we only have one VPC at the moment that doesn't have an internet gateway. So I can click on Attach Internet Gateway, and that's it. It's now attached to the VPC. Now, it's not usable until you actually add an entry into a route table. So that's what we need to do. We need to come to our route table, choose the route table for our custom VPC. I can see that it's this one here. If I click on routes, we can see we have that default route. That's the local one, which means that the implicit router will route traffic to any IP address in the CIDR block for the VPC. I'm going to click on Edit Routes, Add Route, and then what we're going to do is specify 0.0.0.0/0. So that's the any IP address. So any IP address outside of this range is going to go to the target we specify here. If you choose the drop down, you can then see that there's several different types of target that you can select. We're going to choose Internet Gateway, and it should populate it, and we can see that that's the Internet Gateway we want to attach. So let's click on Save Routes, and we now have our route successfully added. So that's great. That means that we now have routing working for the instances that we deploy into our public subnets. Now, at the moment, our private subnet is also associated with this internet gateway. Now, no, don't worry, because even if we launched an instance there now, it wouldn't have a public IP, so it wouldn't be able to access the outside world. But we do want to create a separate route table for the private subnets. So I'm going to choose Create Route Table. I'm going to call this private-RT, choose the VPC, and then click on Create. And that's the route table created. If we now select the route table, choose Routes, and we'll see that it automatically puts in the local route for the CIDR block of the VPC. So that's great. And that's all I want in there at this stage. But what I want to do is associate the correct subnets. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't actually show me the names of the subnets here. But if I just go back to my address blocks here, I know that the 4th, 5th, and 6th address blocks are the ones that I assigned to my private VPC. So they're the 48, the 64, and the 80. So let's come back over, choose Edit Subnet Associations. I want to select the 48, the 64, and the 80, and click on Save. And we can now see that we have those subnets associated with the route table. Now if we go back to the route table which is associated with the public subnets, we can now see it only has these three, and they're not even explicitly associated. They're not explicitly associated, but because this is the main route table for the VPC, if you don't associate a VPC, it will always be associated with this route table. So we've now got this set up correctly. So that's it for this lesson. We've now set up our VPC. The VPC has an internet gateway. The public subnets will have a route to that internet gateway in their route table, and the private subnets have been separated so that they don't have any routes to the outside world at this stage. That's it for this lesson. I'll see you in the next lesson.